Hello, fellow painters and creative people alike, right? Today, I'm excited to offer you a free, simple birthday card painting class in watercolor, which, heads up though, I'm going to be making my own watercolors out of acrylic paints. So if you don't have watercolor paints just laying around, like most people probably don't, you can do this as well, okay? And even if you do have watercolor paints laying around and you've got some acrylics on hand, I encourage you to try this method, experimenting with creating our own watercolors from acrylic paint, because watercolor paints typically come in one form, and they can be kind of finicky to mix together to make your own colors, which is fine if you got like a big watercolor palette with like all the colors of the rainbow and all the colors under the sun and more on it, right? But if you don't, this is a great way to make your own watercolor paints out of acrylic paints. Super duper easy. Plus, at the same time, we're going to be creating a watercolor themed birthday card, a greeting card, right? So, and actually I should even mention, because it's going to have a cake design on the front, you could actually use this card for occasions other than just birthdays. This would be great for like anniversaries or weddings or basically any event that you attend where there is a cake involved, right? You could gift this card. It doesn't just have to be birthday, you guys, but whatever occasion you want to do this for. Let's go on ahead and get started. So let's go over all the materials you're going to need for today. You're going to need, first of all, unless you're using your own watercolors, your own watercolor palette, you know, with the dry watercolors in it, or the tube kind that you make on your own. If you've got watercolors, that's fine. If you want to mix your own watercolors, though, out of acrylic paint, which is what I'm going to be doing, you're going to need something to mix them in, okay? And don't panic if you don't already have something like this, you know. This is actually really cheap. You can get a pack of these at the dollar store, which is what I always do. But if you don't have one of these, that's fine. You can go out and get one. Or if you don't even want to go out and get one, you guys, you can always use like little tiny like shot glasses, or like those little like shot glass red Solo cups. Those are cute. Those would totally work. Even regular, like this like regular Solo cup I've got over here that I use for all my painting. You can just add a little bit of water to the bottom and use that as your watercolor palette, right? If you got quite a few of those, you can have one for each color. You can use regular plastic cups, even regular like glasses that you've got in the cabinet or something, or little like mixing bowls, little mixing cups, anything like that, you guys, will work. Basically anything that'll hold like a centimeter to an inch tall of water in it will work. If you got a couple of those, just put a color in each one and you're good to go. You're golden, right? If not, you can use something like this, which is just like a regular painting palette that's got like little cups in it that'll hold the water. That'll totally work as well. You'll also, of course, need some water, fresh water, clean water, right, to make your watercolor with, and a napkin to wipe your brush on. A brush for this class, it actually doesn't matter what kind of brush you want to use, if you want to use a round head or a flat head. I'm just going to be using my trusty handy dandy round head brush. Something to mix your paints with if you will be mixing paints. I use a spatula. You can also use a butter knife or like little like popsicle sticks, those craft sticks. Those work great too. Something to, of course, make your card with. I'm going to be using cardstock. I believe this is 8 by 11, like regular printer paper, right? That sort of size, but it's cardstock. So it's kind of like a thicker paper. I really do recommend using a thicker paper for this class because the watercolor will soak through really thin paper really quickly. So the thicker paper you can use, the better. I'm just using cardstock though, so don't feel like you need to go out and get like fancy dancy watercolor paper, right? Regular cardstock will work. And then of course your paints, like I'm going to be using acrylic paints. If you do use acrylic paints, if you're going to mix your own paints like what I'm going to do, you only need the 3 primary colors, which are red, yellow, and blue. Any variations of these colors doesn't matter as long as they're acrylic paints. And then just to help us, we're going to sketch a couple of things in the beginning, just to have some sort of pencil and maybe like a straight edge or a ruler. Like I've got a ruler here, but you can totally just use like a book, the edge of a magazine or something. That totally works too. Any type of pencil, doesn't matter. Mechanical is great. Let's go, right? So to get started with class, we just need to course, fold our card into a card shape. So I'm going to go ahead and fold this in half, lining up the edges, simple, right? As best you can. Making a crease and folding it. And that's step 1 and done already, right? If you didn't already fold your paper before class, now you got it. And I should also say, if you use an 8x11 piece of paper or cardstock, like what I'm doing with this 8x11 cardstock, once you fold it in half, it's actually the exact size to fit in an A9 envelope. If you want to get out, if you have envelopes laying around, like if you got any spare envelopes, I know we used to have like a box laying around here with all the spare envelopes from like Hallmark cards that you never, that you just use and pile up. But you might also just have regular envelopes laying around. I can show you, this is the envelopes that I typically use. I just get like big boxes of them because I make cards all the time. And it's just a regular A9, sometimes an invitation envelope, and that is the exact size that's going to fit your card, an A9 envelope, if you do an 8x11 piece of paper. You can also cut your paper if you need to, if you've got smaller envelopes, like the legal, or like the small envelopes, I don't know what those are called, but A9 envelope for an 8x11 piece of paper. That's really important to note. So now, before we can get started actually mixing our paints and painting on our pages here, I'm going to go on ahead and make a bit of a sketch that's going to be just like a little bit of a guideline for me here today. So, I'm going to switch it around this way so I'm in inches here, sorry. People outside of the US who use centimeters, I don't. So, I'm going to make about, just an estimate if you don't have a ruler or anything, about a 3-inch line. Somewhere about, again, just a rough estimate, about a third to a fourth, about a fourth, maybe a third, up the page. I'm going to try to center it, and I'm just going to make a 3-inch line. Okay, that's all it is, just a little bit of a 3-inch line, like that. This is going to be the base of our cake stand in our design today, okay? Just like that. And then down below that, let's make maybe about a 1.5-inch line. That would be like center to this. Again, just guessing. Down here, I'm going to make that about 1.5 inches, the other part of the base. Now from there, you can go on ahead and make the stem. You can either do 1 line or 2 lines. I think I'm going to do 1 line. Just connecting them about where you think the center is. So we get kind of this shape going on, alright? This is going to be our cake stand, our base of our cake stand today. Now, from there, I think that's actually all the sketching part we have to do today. Like I said, this is a pretty simple card, you guys, so not a lot of complicated things involved. So I'm going to put this to the side, and we're going to get out our little palette over here. We're going to start mixing the colors that we're going to be using today. So for this class, as always, and especially if you want to come back and take this class more than once, you're more than welcome to. You can actually use whatever colors you want for making your cake layers and the flour on top of your cake, right? You can use whatever colors you actually want. You're like free to choose, right? But if you're doing this the first time and you need a little bit more guidance, I'm going to show you the colors I'm going to be using. And what I'm going to be doing is, I think, 4 colors. You can do more if you like. I think I'm going to do pink, green, blue, and yellow. That's all I'm going to do for today. You can, of course, make more colors if you want to do like orange, purple, turquoise, all the things, right? You can do as many colors as you want, especially if you've got your own watercolor palette. But to go on ahead and get started, if you're mixing your own colors, like what I'm going to do, I'm going to bring my water cup over, and I'm going to take 4 of these slots in my watercolor palette, or 4 of your little shot glasses, your little mixing bowls, whatever you're using. And I'm actually going to take, this is a handy dandy trick, I'm going to take a straw, just a regular old plastic straw, and I'm going to use this like a rubber dropper to fill in these 4 slots, just about to the top with water. If you're using little mixing bowls or shot glasses, you just want to get about an inch, a centimeter to an inch of water in the bottom. It really doesn't have to be that much, you guys. Or if you've got a rubber dropper, you can totally use that too. Be fancy, you go for it. Or if you don't have either of these things, you can always just pour. You guys, it's fine. Just pour your water into your slots, your cups, your bowls, whatever. I just think using a bit of a rubber dropper or a makeshift rubber dropper like I've got here makes it a little bit easier so I don't spill it everywhere. All right. Now, once I've got those 4 filled, I'm going to start by mixing up my colors. So what did I say first? I think I said pink. Actually, I'm going to do yellow and blue first because they're kind of the most straightforward. Don't have to mix 2 different colors together or anything. So I'm going to get my mixing tool over here, and I'm going to start with blue. And this is a really nice tip also, you guys. It really doesn't take that much acrylic paint to make watercolor paint. We essentially just need like a little dip of it. So I'm going to open, if I can get this up. And I'm going to get, with my mixing tool, either up here in the cap, sometimes you can just dip a little bit out of the cap if there's some sitting there, or if it's like a newer tube and there's not a lot of paint, just squeeze, you guys just squeeze your acrylic paint tube until like a little bit, there we go, comes up out of the top. And then from there you can just dip your mixing tool gently in there, but you only need, like, this is as much as you need. You really don't need that much, just a little dip of it on the end of your mixing tool. Now from there, we're just going to take this and we're going to dip it directly into one of these little mixing spots or your mixing cups, whatever you filled with water. And we're going to swirl this acrylic paint into the water. And this is where the magic happens, because this is literally going to transform the acrylic paint into watercolor paint. Like, it's that simple. Like, boom. Mind blown, you guys. So this is a great way to get started right away with making, well, to do watercolor painting without having to go out and buy like a whole watercolor set, because you actually don't need to. Because watercolor can be made from acrylic paint. Especially if you already like to do acrylic paint, you already have a bunch of acrylic paints laying around. This is something you can do with them, you guys, to make your own watercolors. You're probably like, I didn't know that and I never thought of that before. Well, now you have. Right? Now, aside from that, I also wanted to do, I think, a little bit of plain yellow. So just in another one of these spots, I'll pick another one. I'm going to do the same thing, either picking out a little bit from the cap here and or squeezing it and then just getting a little bit out of the tube. Well, just a little bit on the end there. And then we'll mix it up into one of these slots or one of your mixing cups. Sometimes it helps to kind of scrape it on the edge. Sometimes it gets stuck to our mixing tool. There we go. Yeah, scrape it off a little bit before you can really swirl it in the water. Get a nice pretty watercolor. Nice color of watercolor. Just like that. I'm going to wipe off my mixing tool again. And now, another one of these spots, I was going to make green. However, I don't have a tube of green paint. But what I do have is yellow like I just used and blue like I just used. I know, it's amazing. Yellow and blue actually makes green. You guys, yellow and blue makes green, if you didn't already know that. However, when we mix, and especially with watercolor, when we mix our own green, we want to be careful with the blue, because sometimes blue, since it's a darker color, I mean, if we look on the palette here, we can see the blue and the yellow. We can tell that the blue is definitely darker in tone than the yellow. So when we mix these two together, if we mix too much blue in there, it's gonna get more like turquoise-ish, which is fine if you want to do like a teal or a turquoise with a little bit more blue, a little bit of a bluish green effect. But if not, if you're going for straight green, you want to add significantly less blue and a little bit more yellow, okay? So I'm actually going to start out by mixing some yellow in there. Get some more out of here. And I'm going to start by putting this yellow in here, and I'm just going to mix yellow just like what we did down here. I'm just going to start by making it a yellow color. Scrape it off the edge and really mix it all up together. Just like that. Now from there, scrape that off the edge. Clean my mixing tool off. Now I'm going to go back in, and this is going to be like even less blue than we used to make this blue. Even less, like so small of an amount you wouldn't even believe. I'm just going to get this right out of here. Whoa, as I dump everything all over. Hello. Just this tiny, like you can't even tell that there's blue on there, but there is. It's just such a tiny, tiny amount, you guys. We're going to dip that in to the yellow and start to mix that up. Scrape it on the edge, and mix it all together. And then you'll see it'll start to turn greenish. Mine's actually still pretty much yellow. However, I want you to pay attention to what you're mixing at home, because your colors may work a lot differently than mine, right? Whatever I'm doing here may not be the exact same case for you. So I really want you to pay attention to what you're doing, not just what I'm doing here. Because you're going to see if you need to add more of something else to this watercolor. And if you do, that's fine. Like I think I actually, surprisingly, I need a little bit more blue. For you, things might be really blue, and maybe you want to add a little bit more yellow back in there, okay? Or maybe you just like found like the perfect shade of green and you're like good to go. Okay, so pay attention to what you're doing and see if you need to add anything else or not. But again, if you are going to add more blue, just tiny, like so small that you can't even see it, right? You need a microscope, the microscopic level to see it on the end of your tool. But like that's how little you want to add at a time. You can add a couple of tries, little more amounts of blue at a time. But we just really, really want to be careful that we don't overwhelm it with blue. Because with green, that can happen really, really quickly. So now, I think I've got, it's still kind of yellowish, but I think this is green enough for me. I'm going to leave it like that because I don't want to get out of control with the blue in there or anything. So I'm done with these paints now. Now the last color, the only last one I have to do, is pink. And to make pink, we're going to do the same thing with red, with just a little bit more than those minuscule, like microscopic amounts of blue we were putting in the green. But not as much red as we made the yellow and the blue over here. Remember, we got a, still small, but we got a pretty, like, significantly larger glob on there and mixed them up. For the red, we're just going to do a tiny amount, or tiny amounts at a time. Because pink, you guys, is just a lighter version of red, right? If you want to know the reasoning behind this. Pink is just a lighter version of red. And two ways to lighten up a color when we're working with acrylics. One is to add white to it. Two is to add water to it. Okay, water will lighten things up. So we don't want to add so much red that it overpowers the water, right? We don't want red, we want pink. So we're going to add small amounts of this and let the water lighten it up for us. Even a little bit less than that to start. There we go. So not very much. I'm going to start to swirl it up in this color here. And actually, you can swirl it up until you start to get a pink. And then once it starts to turn pink, to prevent it from getting too reddish, you can just take your mixing tool over here and wipe it off. And then if you want to come back and mix it up some more, that's fine too. But just like that, that's how we get nice, pretty pink. And you guys, if If it got a little bit out of control and it turned into red, that's totally fine. You can always just dump this color out. I mean, it's like this much water, right? It's not a big deal. Just dump it out or start in a new cup or a new spot and just start over again and try mixing it again. You can always do that, you guys. It's not like one try and you're done. You can always try again. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal. So now I'm going to put these colors a little bit to the side and get ready to actually start with our painting. So, like I said before, either a round head brush or a flat head brush, it actually doesn't matter, or what size, whether it's a small brush or a large brush, really doesn't matter today. I'm just going to be using this like small to medium round head brush, that's fine. Get your brush nice and wet to start, so it's nice and pliable. The water will help loosen it up for us. Especially since we're working with watercolor, we want a nice loose brush that's going to glide really gently across the page. And now what we're going to do is we're going to make one in each color, one in each of these colors, or whatever colors you mixed. We're going to make 4 lines, just 4 streaks of color basically, kind of stacking one on top of the other. Alright, that's really, like I said, this is a really simple class. That's basically it. You can do things in whatever color order you want, right? I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to start with pink. You can watch me first if you need to, if you don't quite understand what's going on. And I'm going to actually, I think I'm going to open my card so that it lays a little bit more flat on the page. There we go, because it was kind of popping up on me a little bit. And especially if you have like a thinner paper, you might want to open it up too, because you don't want it to soak through to the back side of your card, right? You might want to keep it open and let it dry before you fold it. But I'm going to take this pink and I'm just going to kind of create like a box shape right on top of this, the cake stand part here. Get as much color on there as you need. Just kind of streak it across. Just create a couple of streaks of color here, just like this. My pink is very light, but that's okay. It might be a little bit darker as it dries. You can just add as much color as you want here, just kind of creating like a box shape. You can kind of leave like a streak on the ends. You can kind of let it overlap with the cake stand or go on the inside of the cake stand, doesn't really matter. The more you add, the more your paper is. Even if you're using cardstock like what I am, it's getting pretty wet here, so I'm going to kind of stop there. I don't want to get completely out of control. And basically, you guys, that's step 1 and done. Like, that's 1 and done. Alright? Now, before you move on to the next color, really important that you clean your brush off, because we don't want to contaminate our colors here. And dip into whatever color you want to be the next layer. I'm going to make mine green, so I'm going to dip into my green here. And just like right on top of that, you don't have to make them touch, you can leave a little bit of a gap in between. Kind of makes a nice design too, that way so that they don't blend together though. Just like that with my kind of yellowish green, but it is what it is. Watercolor is not a perfect science, right? We're not going to get the exact color that we want every single time, typically. Just like that, just creating a streak of color just across like that. And boom, another layer is done. Clean your brush off, and you can move on to whatever is going to be your next color. I'm going to do some blue. This. Just play around with moving the watercolor all over the page. It's always fun to do. Like that. Then I'm going to clean my brush again and do my final layer. yellow, which is going to be very, very bright. Now, with this yellow, I'm actually going to play around even more. All right, I'm going to play around even more. I'm going to wipe this off so I don't have a lot of yellow in there. But I'm actually going to dip it back in my pink now. And just wait. I'm going to kind of drip that in here, and I'm going to create some like streaks of added color with my pink. Just like this. So I'm kind of creating, it's going to be like orange. Right? I'm kind of creating like some orange streaks in here. Just adding some extra like layers of color in there. Like that. You could of course play around with that as well. Or not, that's fine if you want to leave it as is. Now, once we've got our 4 layers, that was pretty much the easiest part, right? You could leave it like this if you want to. That's fine. Or what I'm going to do is I'm going to create like a little flower. I'm going to create a little flower with a little like stem, little stemmage. I always like saying that, little stemmage up there. So I'm going to get my brush nice and clean. And you can pick whatever color you want for your flower and for like the stem, for the center. I think I'm actually going to be different today, and I'm going to be different, yeah. And I'm going to make a blue flower with a yellow center, I think. So this is just free-handed. You can just, the general shape of a flower, you just kind of have to guess here. We didn't sketch this part, but just do your best. You could always just do a couple of circles and connect them. That's kind of what I'm doing here anyway. I'm just making like 5 circles around, just like this. But I'm leaving some space in the center for my yellow. Yeah, some space for my yellow. And then again, you can always play around with adding some extra dollops of color in there. Like for example, since I did blue here, if you know how to mix colors, I know that if I add a little bit of my pink to it, it might create some like purple spots, like that. I can add some like purple highlights over here. So you can play around with that as well. Or maybe you add some like some green spots in there so that it kind of creates like a turquoise color, turquoise highlights. I wouldn't necessarily add yellow to this because then that would just make it green, and we want green to be for the stem, right? We want a green stem anyway, so I wouldn't add too awful much of that, but whatever you want to do, totally fine. So now, making sure my brush is nice and clean again, I'm going to go on ahead and create that stem with the green. Again, just kind of freehanding. I'll just create like a line here. Some like what would be the petals on it. Like that. Gotta be careful not to touch my actual flower though, because then my colors might bleed together. That's something to be careful with when we're working with watercolor. And now, since I'm feeling actually pretty creative, I'm going to take my yellow, and I think for one, I'm going to try to fill in the center as best I can, this center that I left blank. But be careful not to touch the blue too awful much with it, because again our colors might bleed together, so you can leave a little bit of a gap in between there, that's fine. But I think I'm actually going to create like a second smaller flower down here with my yellow, like it's a little daisy, or just like some extra like little dots of added color down here like this. Really just an addition of color, not even really a flower, but I'm just kind of dotting extra color in here just so it kind of looks like it's more connected with the cake, and there's, yeah, like that. And now, fellow friends, if you've made it this far, you're actually like completely done. or you can be completely done. You can just clean off your brush. You can use your watercolors. You guys, you can play around with like another sheet of paper or something if you've got leftover watercolors. Or if not, just admire your card. You can always fold it. Make sure my inside's a little bit wet, but it's not too terrible. Another thing though, I will say, if you want to kind of spruce things up a little bit more, you can, I'll wait for this to dry. I'm going to give it a couple of minutes, and then I will show you with like a marker or a pen or something. Just a way that we can just add a little bit of like outlining and stuff to this. So we'll do that. I'm going to let this dry though first. Now, hopefully my paint is dry enough. Please wait, you guys, pause the video and wait until your watercolor is like very, very dry before, if you want to do the outlining with a marker or anything. Because otherwise, if it's really wet still, the ink from your marker or your pen or whatever you're going to outline with will seep into the water of your watercolor paint, and it'll be a mess. It'll be like everywhere. So highly recommend you wait until everything is completely dry, or just about. I've still got a little bit of wet spots here in the flower, but that's okay. Just until it's about completely dry before you do any outlining, so that, plus you don't want to get your marker wet because then that'll ruin your marker. So I'm going to be doing this with this Sharpie, just an oil, it's an oil-based actually, yeah. Oil-based paint pen. You can use whatever type of pen, marker, just a regular Sharpie, or other type of permanent marker. It doesn't have to be Sharpie brand. I'm not an ambassador for Sharpie or anything, but just saying, if it works, it works. So anything you want to use, I'm just going to do a couple of touch-ups, just a little bit of outlining, just to make things pop a little bit. So this is, again, optional if you don't want to do this. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow along like the base of my cake stand. And, well, the whole cake stand, I'm just going to kind of outline. Just like this. And then we can also do like a little bit of outlining on our layers of cake. This is just kind of wherever you want to like outline it a little bit, give it some shape, do like a little curve here. I kind of like putting little, yeah, like little lines, little curves around each of the layers, just a little bit. In between the layers, just kind of separate them. And just to make them pop a little bit more, you can kind of fade your lines out like that, move around this. Then of course you can do the same thing, outlining around your flower a little bit. Doesn't have to be the whole flower, but just little parts of it, maybe a little bit of like these two colors here we did. And then if you want to do any on your stem here, outlining a little bit. You don't have to outline everything. I actually like prefer doing it this way, where you just outline little sections of it, just to give it that little extra pop, right? That little extra pop to it. And again, that's all there is to it. So, and then after all that, you can of course fold your card completely now if you haven't already. And now, boom, you've got a beautiful, beautiful birthday card, wedding card. Remember, all the things, it doesn't just have to be birthday, but you've got a beautiful cake inspired greeting card that you made with your own hands, your own watercolors too, if you mixed your own watercolors. And of course the inside we left blank so that you can write your own message. You can sign it. You can even sign the front like an artist signature. That would be kind of cute. But do whatever you want with this card, with this design. Take this class as many times as you want. You can make this card multiple times for multiple occasions, right? And of course, if you really did enjoy this class, which I'm hoping you did, I actually have a brand new card creation course on my Canvas Academy platform, which is full of premium painting classes and courses that are designed to help you grow as an artist, whatever stage in your artist journey you're on, right? Whether you're a beginner, you're intermediate, you're experienced, any level, you can benefit from taking classes with us on Canvas Academy. And especially since we have a new cards creation course where we make tons of greeting cards like this and more, even more intricate ones. Some of them might even give you like printable files that you can like have text on the inside, text on the outside, or more intricate designs, right? This was just a simple kind of a taste, right, for what we kind of do in that course. So I hope to see you again and to paint with you again, either here or over on Canvas Academy. And until then, later and happy painting.